Now, over the years in pro wrestling, WWE fans have learned quite a lot from one Stone Cold Steve Austin. He gave us some of the most important life lessons that any young teenager growing up could possibly have asked for during the Attitude Era. He taught us how to say hell yeah. He taught us that there's never a bad time to drink a beer. But most importantly, he taught us the three most crucial letters in this little life that we all live. DTA, don't trust anyone. And those three letters would prove to be prophetic, not just for Stone Cold Steve Austin's career, but for all of wrestling in general. It doesn't matter whether it was a babyface who's turned heel, whether it was a faction that's imploded, or maybe someone was just a piece of shit the whole time and you didn't know about it. Either way, betrayals are rife in WWE. With that in mind, I'm Adam Nicholas, this is What Culture Wrestling, and these are the 10 most shocking wrestling betrayals. Number 10, the destruction of DIY. Back in 2017, NXT TakeOver Chicago was an absolutely brilliant wrestling card, a fantastic wrestling show, and all in all, left fans feeling ultimately satisfied and happy at all of the amazing wrestling they'd just watched. Apart from one tiny little thing. Because while everyone had been having such a good time with this show, despite the fact maybe the DIY didn't manage to beat the Authors of Pain on the night in the main event in that ladder match for the tag team championships, it had all been pretty amazing and we were, it wasn't a great result, but okay, we accept it, we move on. But then, Tommy Ciampa got his hands on Johnny Gargano. Now, there have been teasers of this for months and months, going all the way back to their Cruiserweight Classic clash in 2016, and this was a thing that we thought maybe was being teased, but ultimately was never going to happen. And just when we kind of got ourselves lulled into that false sense of security, even on this pay-per-view actually, the logo came up in the bottom corner, everything was going to be all right. Tommy and Johnny were going to live to fight another day as they cuddled and walked off up the ramp together before Ciampa put his hands on Gargano's face and said those words, "This is my moment." What followed this was an absolute brutal beatdown of Johnny Gargano by Tommaso Ciampa. He smashed him into the Titantron, he kneed him in the head. Gargano looked up desperate for answers and he wasn't going to get them. What he was going to get though was an air raid crash off a commentary desk through a bunch of tables below. We all remember the graphic of Tommaso Ciampa sat on the desk looking like he'd just done something terrible, because he really had. But whether you liked it or you hated it, there's no question about it. This delivered a fantastic moment that you will never ever forget. Fans were left slack-jawed in the arena chanting "F you Ciampa" to the point where they had obviously created the biggest heel in wrestling in just a few short minutes. You might not have liked it, but this was red hot. Number 9, Sergeant Slaughter turns his coat. Many superstars over the years have used a patriotic gimmick for their wrestling persona. I mean, it's even still happening to this day. Just look at Lacey Evans. Now, sometimes this works and sometimes not so much, but with Sergeant Slaughter, I think we can all agree he was one of the best examples of an All-American in WWE, this side of Hulk Hogan. Fans loved to cheer him. He had a military background. This was a man you could trust and a man who could be seen as Mr. America. And for that exact reason, this makes Sergeant Slaughter's heel turn all the more impactful. Because back in the 90s during Operation Desert Storm in Iraq, Vince McMahon had a eureka moment in his head and decided that maybe it would be a good idea to cash in on this cheap heat and turn Sergeant Slaughter heel and have him reveal himself as a supporter of Saddam Hussein. And to make matters even worse, not only did Sergeant Slaughter turn heel, not only did he destroy the American flag he used to stand for all those years, and not only did he align himself alongside Saddam Hussein, but on top of that, Vince McMahon put the WWE Championship on him. I don't want to say it was genius, because it was really in bad taste, but it got a reaction. But maybe not exactly the reaction that Vince McMahon was looking for. He wanted the controversy to catapult this into the main event of WrestleMania 7 and make everyone want to see it, and thought it was going to be a real ticket seller. Unfortunately, a lot of people had kind of been looking forward to Hulk Hogan versus The Ultimate Warrior in a rematch. That was now off the cards, and if anything, fans were just kind of left disappointed. Number 8, the Mega Powers implode. When two of the biggest and brightest stars of the 80s were pushed together into a tag team with more meat than a butcher's shop, Macho Man and Hulk Hogan combined, there was only one name you could give to this tag team. Of course, it was the Mega Powers. I mean, this one is an absolute no-brainer. Take this really good guy and this really good guy, put them together, the fans went absolutely wild. Can you even imagine it? Putting your two favorites in a tag team together. The actual power on display between these two guys, whether that was in fiction or in reality, is absolutely wild, and people obviously went nuts for it. But you see, with two big beefy boys comes two big beefy egos, and it wasn't long before these two started to clash. Now, to be fair, anyone with half a brain probably could have seen this one coming, because Macho Man Randy Savage was the then WWF champion, and Hulk Hogan was a huge star in his own right who was one day going to want that belt again, brother. And sure enough, that day came, but it wasn't because of the belt initially. More shockingly, this was all centered around Miss Elizabeth. The Macho Man Randy Savage was not a big fan of Elizabeth and Hulk Hogan as pals at all. As George Costanza would tell you, worlds are colliding, Jerry! Worlds are colliding! Tensions were building between Hogan and Savage, and obviously while this had started with Miss Elizabeth, it wasn't long until it manifested in the ring. During the Royal Rumble in 1989, Hogan inadvertently caused the elimination of Savage from the Rumble, and it's fair to say, he was not happy about it at all. From that point, Savage was a paranoid wreck who would eventually end up turning on Hogan at the main event too, completely destroying their blockbuster tag team, and inevitably the feud was born. This whole thing had drama, it had a fantastic storyline, it had some great matches in there too, and all in all, this was an absolute classic, even in a time of the golden era of WWE, where things were considered to be very good in the first place. This goes down as one of the most memorable moments in professional wrestling history. Number 7, Orton's evolution. Now, Triple H has had many ups and downs in his WWE career, shout out Simon Miller, but 2004, I think it's fair to say, was probably one of his most frustrating times. He tapped out at WrestleMania 20 to Chris Benoit, losing his World Heavyweight Championship, and he just could not get it back from the Rabid Wolverine. So with that in mind, can you imagine what it did for the fragile ego of the game when his own stablemate in Evolution, Randy Orton, managed to do just that? Not only did he beat Benoit, winning the World Heavyweight Championship, but also beat him in a title rematch the very next night. So despite Randy Orton stepping into the spotlight, claiming the World Heavyweight Championship, bringing it back to Evolution, you'd think maybe that would have got him a round of applause, maybe a pat on the back. Nope, he just got his arse kicked. All of Evolution turned on Randy Orton, he was kicked out of the group, beaten to a bloody pulp, and to make matters worse, Triple H would eventually take the title off him at Unforgiven. Now, while this one had kind of been signposted throughout, it was always going to happen with these four egos in there. It was only a matter of time until someone turned on somebody. It's fair to say the big reason for this being so shocking is because of how intense the beatdown was on Randy Orton, the fact that he ended up losing the belt despite supposedly being launched to superstardom, and it just didn't quite click for Randy after all of this. Number 6, kicking the leg out. Royal Rumble 1994 saw a family dispute violently explode as Owen Hart assaulted his brother Bret after finding himself frustrated and furious with his older sibling. With Bret Hart being regarded as the superior of the two brothers, Owen had finally had enough of being in Bret's shadow and decided it was time to take some divisive action. You see, the brothers had lost their tag team titles that night to the Quebecers after Bret fell under the weight of a severe knee injury. And so after several months of on-screen build and several years of off-screen build, heavily implied, Owen Hart finally snapped. This was the moment he could take no more, and he beat down his already injured brother, sabotaging his knee even further and kicking it out from under him. Now, this shocking betrayal will go down because of the family ties that were involved in it and the fantastic story between the two brothers, but it also probably gets remembered because of the infamous botch of Owen Hart's promo where he said, "And that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg." Impressive. Number 5, DX Degenerates. 4 years after his career-ending back injury, Shawn Michaels returned to wrestling in the WWE, reformed D-Generation X, and was ready to take the whole world by storm alongside his best friend, Triple H. And honestly, who could forget this moment? The DX theme tune bursting into the arena for the first time in ages properly. Shawn Michaels and Triple H were back. They had the DX shirts on, they had the matching blue jeans, the long hair. It was a good look, brother. It was working, and everybody was happy. The fans were going mad. They were gonna get to see some wrestling history tonight. DX was back. Or were they? Much to the shock and horror of everyone in the building, Triple H decided, nah pal, this isn't happening. I'm the man, you're not, you're just an old bit of dead weight. Boom, pedigree, Shawn Michaels left lying on the floor, and DX in tatters. Instead of that lovely nostalgic stroll down memory lane, fans might as well have been slapped in the face with a fish and Triple H giving them the V's, because ultimately, whether you loved it, hated it, or you really got upset about it, it doesn't matter. This was so good. Whoever had the balls to say, let's promise them DX and then completely take it away from them is a genius. Probably Vince, back in the day when he actually used to make some good decisions. Number 4, leaping through the window. And speaking of Shawn Michaels, you may have felt slightly bad for him there when Triple H decided to turn his back on him, but when you see this entry, it might make you feel a little bit better about it. Yes, who could forget the launching of HBK's career in 1991 as he smashed Marty Jannetty's head through Brutus the Barber Beefcake's barbershop window. I hope he paid for that, by the way. Now, as you'll find with most of the betrayals on this list, it started with a bit of tension between two guys who were buddies, because let's be honest, where else is it going to start? Two egos consistently clashing, and in this scenario, between Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, the question was, who was going to be the one to go off and have a successful singles career, and ultimately, who would be the one who get left behind? And I think we can all probably agree, whoever decided to come up with the creative choice to push Michaels instead of Jannetty, that person should still be getting a raise now from WWE, whether they're working for them or not, because what a decision that would prove to be. Shawn Michaels wasn't waiting around for anybody. He decided to take matters into his own hands, or into his own feet, as it were, with a sweet chin music to the head of Jannetty, and as we said, smashed him through that window. The destruction of fan favourite tag team The Rock has left fans absolutely devastated and obviously turned Michaels into a massive heel, but I think it worked out alright for him because he ended up going on an Intercontinental Championship run not long after, and then following that, he became the champion of the company. I think he made a good choice this time. Number 3, love hurts. And to think this entire thing, all of the heartbreak we're about to go through, started with $1 Canadian. Yes, in late 2003, it saw a bet take place between Christian and Chris Jericho, or almost take place at least, as to who could possibly pull one of these two women first. It was either Trish or Lita. Christian was going to try and pull Lita, and Jericho was going to try and pull Trish. Kind of disgusting, really, when you think about it, but it was 2003. Is that okay? I guess. As fate would have it though, or some very good judgment backstage, this never actually happened because Trish Stratus would overhear the two making the bet. She was disgusted, she called them out for it, and ultimately this one was kiboshed on the head. As a result of this, it's fair to say Jericho and Christian learned a few things along the way, and maybe they took away some different lessons here. Jericho decided, yeah, I have been a bit of a douchebag there, and I'm going to try and be better behaved, even though he was kind of doing that because he wanted to win Trish Stratus over. But nevertheless, at least he was trying. Christian, on the other hand, went down a slightly different route. You see, Christian apparently took away from this lesson that you don't talk about women behind their back, you actually beat them up in front of their face. Absolutely furious was Jericho with all of this, and ultimately it would lead to him challenging Christian to a match at WrestleMania 20 with Trish Stratus in his corner. And now you see, this is where the term nice guys finish last actually comes from. Never mind any of that bedroom banter, this is where it happens, because in the ring, Jericho goes one-on-one with Christian. We've got a match on our hands at WrestleMania 20, but ultimately he doesn't get that revenge he was looking for. Why? Because Trish Stratus turns on Chris Jericho. Absolutely nobody had seen this one coming. Trish had managed to pull the wool over the eyes of Chris Jericho and the WWE Universe, no less. The reaction was rife. They were not happy about it all. But ultimately, Chris Jericho, in the space of just a few short weeks, had lost his love interest and his tag team partner and even a really good friend. It's no wonder he went to AEW, is it? Number 2, The Architect Ascends. The Shield were absolutely unstoppable from their debut at Survivor Series in 2012 all the way through till 2014. This was a unit you could absolutely guarantee success and victory in almost everything they did. They were too good, they were too strong, and they were too united. Coming off back-to-back victories over Evolution at both Extreme Rules and Payback, when the Shield turned up for Monday Night Raw on the June 2nd edition 2014, it's fair to say everyone thought these guys were at the peak of their powers. What could they not do? Roman Reigns was set to go one-on-one with Randy Orton in the main event of that Monday Night Raw, and the Shield came down, as they did every time, to the ring together as a unit, ready and waiting for Evolution to turn up. Down to the ring came Triple H and Randy Orton, looking surprisingly smug for two guys who just had their arses handed to them the night before, and you got the feeling that something was up. I just don't think anybody had quite figured out it was going to be this. As Triple H told the Shield, there's always a plan B. Absolutely nobody saw what came next as Seth Rollins buried a chair into the back of Roman Reigns. Dean Ambrose looked absolutely shocked, as were the audience, as was everybody at home, and that would be followed by an absolutely brutal beatdown of his fellow Shield brothers. Now yes, over the last 3 years we'd seen tensions brewing between the three, but that's just three young, hungry guys. We thought they'd managed to get back on the same page. They'd just beat Evolution the night before, and everyone had already thought that maybe if there was going to be a heel turn, it would be either Dean Ambrose or Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins had always kind of been the level-headed one. And while Seth Rollins' out-of-the-blue betrayal may have come as a massive shock to everybody involved, it's fair to say, ever since that night, these three have been launched to superstardom. And number one, with a bullet, HULKAMANIA runs vile. Now, back in 1996, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall set the wrestling world literally on fire as they turned up and began their invasion of WCW. With the added implication that Hall and Nash had specifically been sent to Ted Turner's WCW by Vince McMahon from the WWF to completely sabotage the promotion from within, it's fair to say it came with a little bit of controversy. Fast forward to Bash at the Beach 1996, and Hall and Nash were set to take on Sting, Lex Luger, and Randy Savage in a match where they said and promised that their third man would be revealed. Towards the end of the match, fans went wild with joy as Hulk Hogan came down to the ring, presumably to stop those two in their mad antics, because things had got out of hand and Hulk Hogan was here to restore order, brother. But in a plot twist that completely rocked the wrestling world to its very core, like two tectonic plates smashing into one another, Hulk Hogan dropped the big leg on Savage and revealed himself to be the third member of what would finally become the New World Order. This was arguably the biggest, baddest, and most crowd-infuriating heel turn of all time. The fans lost their minds. They could not take it. They were furious. Hogan and Nash and Hall had rubbish raining down on them from fans who had just completely lost it. This icon, this yellow and red icon of wrestling history, completely tarnished, decides to turn his back on them all, and so Hollywood Hulk Hogan was born. And from that point on, the New World Order took the wrestling landscape by storm. So there you have it. Those are our 10 most shocking wrestling betrayals. But let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm sure you've got a few that we could add to this list to make it better. Maybe we forgot some. Maybe there's just ones you have that are favorable. Put them in the comments. Let me know all about them. Don't forget to like and share. Hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. You can find the original article for this piece at whatculture.com/WWE. You can follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, or if you want to follow me, if that's your kind of thing, you can find me on Twitter at @It'sAdamNicholas, or maybe you just want some more videos. If that is the case, there should be some just over here. I'm Adam Nicholas, this has been What Culture Wrestling, and I will see you next time.